How you doing? What's going on, man?
Good.
Hi. Drop the hammer.
No.
Hey, what is going on?
I'm not getting an answer on call.
This is Plausibly Live.
Well, good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, wherever you are, whatever you do. A lot of things happening in the world today, most of them far beyond our control, you might say. So perhaps it's time we took a pause and thought about life and thought about the laws of gravity, the DePape tapes, football, politics, and or the news. Don't touch that dial. Just try to hear me out for a little while. I'm doing something I don't normally do here. One of my cinematographic, one of my heroes of cinema and music, for the way, is Frank Sinatra, who was famous for, when he was acting in movies, doing everything in one take. So even the famous fight in The Manchurian Candidate, one take. That was it. And normally that's how I do things. This is a live show. It is recorded live. That's why the name, Plausibly Live. It is designed to sound like a live radio show without a lot of interference and those kind of things. But this morning when I sat down to record this, it's had some unusual circumstances going on, and I was a lot of distractions. And, you know, when you're in a radio studio, you close the door and you put on the sign that says on air, on air. And I actually have one of those. I have an on air sign, but it doesn't work. So I've got to get another one to put on out there. At any rate, a lot of distractions this morning, people coming in, people talking to me, banging in the hallway, that sort of thing. And it really distracted me. And it's not that the show that I recorded this morning is bad at all. I mean, you're going to get the same content in this one. But somehow or another, it just didn't flow. And when I was doing the editing, I was like, oh, it's not working. And the hesitations and the interruptions, and, you know, when somebody interrupts you, where was I? You know, what was I doing? And so repetitiveness and that sort of thing. And all that's great. And if it's just an audio podcast, it's not really that big of a deal. But when it's a video cast, you got to edit all that out. It's a pain to do. So here I am in my studio on a Monday afternoon. It is Monday, January 30th. And we're doing this morning's show again because it's just frustrated with it. So naturally, my voice is a little less thundering now as the day goes on. This is what happens to me because of my issues that are going on with my mouth and my throat and everything else. By the end of the day, my voice is kind of really weak. Should never record at night anymore either, because by then my voice sounds like Mickey Mouse. But for the moment, here I am. And here we go. I don't care about the DePape tape, the Pelosi video. I don't care about it. And I suspect that deep down, neither do most people. Now, before you send me your emails, Dave at thedavebowmanshow.com. Dave, how can you say you don't care about the DePape tapes? Let's define don't care. There are some of my compatriots in this business who have put out podcasts and radio shows where they've spent as much as 3 hours analyzing every frame of the DePape tape like it's the Zapruder film or something. And what we've discovered in this tape, in this video, in this release of this DePape video, the Pelosi video, is that the initial reports were wrong. And I think that maybe that's the big lesson of this whole incident is anytime the first story comes out, it's going to be wrong. It's going to be incorrect. We were told that they were both in their underwear and nothing else. It wasn't true. We were told other things. Now, look, don't get me wrong. I still think the story stinks. I still think that there's obvious attempts to spin this story into something that it's not. But it isn't the assassination of Kennedy. It's not the UFO films, folks. It's not what we're trying to be told that it is. Yes, It's a cover-up. There's no two ways about that. But what exactly is being covered up? In the big, wide, wonderful world of scheme of things, is it even important? Does it even matter? Or is it just people trying to grab your attention for making money, making whatever, or just attention whoring? I don't know. I watched the video. I watched the video multiple times because apparently I have way too much free time. Nothing in the video that I saw either confirms or dismisses any of the narratives involved. If you believe that story A is correct, then the video confirms that for you. If you believe that story B is correct, then the video confirms that for you. And you see in that video whatever it is that you want to see. That's the thing about it. This is the thing about this kind of evidence. You don't see the actual attack. It's not on the video. But what you clearly see is a mentally ill man and a drunk man who are up to something. Read into that whatever you want to. And one of them is clearly insane and goes bananas. You will see in this tape exactly what it is that you want to see. Whatever your chosen version of the story is, this tape will confirm that for you. And if you don't believe me, you can go find other people who will analyze every frame of this tape to verify that what you believe is correct. Huzzah. People see what they want to see, and the end result of all of this will be exactly the same. You understand that, right? DePepe is going to go to prison, and the whole incident's going to be whitewashed away. A year from now, it'll be the butt of some jokes, and there'll be an occasional reference to it, but for the most part, nobody will even remember it. DePepe will be rotting in prison, and Pelosi will still be a drunk, probably closeted, at least bisexual, who wants to keep that quiet because, who wouldn't in that particular case? Nothing is going to change. Nothing in this tape affects the national security of the United States. Do you understand that? I get we don't like him, but Paul Pelosi is not a government official. Does he have some influence with a government official? Maybe. What he has is a lot of money that government official... Never mind. At the end of the day, nothing in this video, nothing in this entire story, nothing in this entire incident, which stinks. I will grant you this story is bad. It looks bad. It sounds bad. It's absurd. And it's a cover-up. And none of it affects anything about the way you live your life. If it hadn't been Paul Pelosi, if it had been, John Smith, just some rich dude who likes to drink and is old and has a wife that works in another city somewhere, nobody would have cared. Nobody would have made anything of this whatsoever. Nobody would have even brought it up. That's how meaningless it would have been because, hey, people have secrets and they have things in their closets that they want to keep in their closet. Would DePepe still go to prison? Probably for assault. Who knows? But it wouldn't have changed anything in your life. It doesn't change anything in my life or your life if Paul Pelosi is a closeted bisexual or even gay guy who just happens to be married to Nancy Pelosi out of convenience. Nothing in your life changes because of that. Do you understand that? Nothing in her life changed. You don't think her policies and her practices and her conduct as a congressman has anything to do with the fact that Paul Pelosi is a drunk and possibly gay? You don't really think any of it's motivated by that, do you? You have no problem believing, we have no problem believing that Hillary Clinton married Bill as a marriage of convenience for political power. Why can't Nancy do that? I mean, I'm not defending Nancy Pelosi, or maybe I am. I don't know. What I do know is we have turned this story, which was a joke. They would have been better off with this story just saying from the word go, nothing, or acknowledging the fact that Paul had invited somebody over, whatever. There are a million different ways they could have handled this story than the way they did. The way they handled it turned it into what it's become, which is, again, the Zapruder film. It's become this, I don't know, giant conspiracy of some sort, of the object of which is I'm not clear on what the object of the conspiracy is. To overthrow the Western civilization? Yeah, I'm pretty sure this isn't it. At any rate, whatever the way they could have handled it, maybe changes things. I don't know. The lesson for us, for me particularly, is, look, the story stank. I said it the day it happened. I said, this story stinks. There's something weird about this story. And having watched the tape, there's still something weird about this story. But the story itself is not that important. The story itself is not that critical. The story itself is that we're jumping all over it, as opposed to, actual things that matter, such as, I don't know, classified documents being held in houses, the National Archives sending people letters saying, hey, do you have anything in your house? Or how about this? Israel attacking Iranian units in Syria? No, Iraq. Shooting wars breaking out. Ukraine. Oh, my God. The Russians announced tweeted the other day, foreign minister, I think it was, said the other day at a meeting, if NATO and Russia go to war, all your tanks aren't going to make any difference because this is going to go nuclear. But what we're coming apart on the right-hand side of things is Pepe and Pelosi. I'm not saying the story is legit. I'm not saying that there wasn't hinkiness going on there that doesn't fit the official agenda story. What I'm saying is nothing in that video proves it either way. But we could waste all of our time and all of our days worrying about it. Or we could move on to the things that actually, I don't know, matter maybe. Or at least, if they don't matter, at least they make more sense. I mean, again, as a conservative, libertarian-leaning, not party, values, liberty-leaning values, why do I care who David Pepe and Paul Pelosi decide to bang with hammers? Why do I care? If they were consenting adults, I don't care. And if they weren't consenting adults, then why isn't Paul Pelosi saying that? Wasn't consenting to this. At the end of the day, what they do behind in their bedroom is their business, not mine. And frankly, I don't really care to know the Pelosi's family secrets. I don't care to know about any of that stuff. So I'm out of the Paul Pelosi story business. I can tell you that right now, because again, until somebody can show me that it actually matters, it's pretty much meaningless. Whatever you choose to believe about the story, it's not going to change anything at all.
Hey, this is Whitey.
And this is Hank.
And you can listen to our podcast, 2 Pint Talk, on all your favorite podcast sources.
So come check it out, where we talk about 2 beers
and everything stuff.
Listen to 2 Pint Talk on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
A long time ago, when I was a very young boy, I go to a place called Estes Park. Estes Park has a very long road through it called Trail Ridge, which was, and may remain still for all I know, a very popular drive through the Rocky Mountains, through Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado. If you ever go there, it's certainly worth it. Beautiful sights. One of my favorite pictures of myself and my father was taken of us there standing on the overlook. When I was a kid, you would go to Estes Park and you would take a bag of peanuts with you. And the purpose of the bag of peanuts was to feed the chipmunks that would come up to you, and they would take the peanut and they would go away. And sometimes even the blue jays would come down and, western scrub jays would come down and take the peanut out of your hand. It was pretty cool. And I have a lot of childhood memories of going to Estes Park, Trail Ridge, and doing that. I mean, my father really loved the mountains of Colorado, and we would spend a lot of time up there seeing things and going places. Some years later, in the mid-90s, I had gone to Colorado on a vacation, taken my now ex-wife with me, and we took her to Trail Ridge because I wanted her to see this, and we bought a bag of peanuts and a bag of Cheetos, and we were headed up to the Trail Ridge there to take the tour. When we got there, it was explained to us by the rangers that you cannot feed the chipmunks anymore. Can't give them peanuts. You can't do this anymore. And the reason was that it creates dependence in the chipmunks. It creates this idea of dependence. The chipmunks get used to being able to eat the peanuts, and they don't do the natural things that they're supposed to do to eat, and so it creates imbalances, and it creates problems for the national park with the chipmunks. I guess it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but it does make sense to me. But at the same time, it's like they're chipmunks, for God's sake. It's not like Alvin and Chip and Dale are taking over the world. But it does create this dependence, and it's the same thing no matter where you go. Now you go to Yosemite, it's the same thing. Don't feed the wildlife, don't feed the bears. And on the internet, don't feed the trolls, because if you feed the trolls, you just get more trolls. If you feed the chipmunks, I guess, you just get more chipmunks. Seems like it would be positive for the other wildlife that eat the chipmunks, but we never really talked about that as kids. Why do I bring all this up? Old friend of mine, Steve Frank, who is in California, posted an article the other day called The Homeless Industrial Complex. And this is a fascinating article to me because I was in the homeless industrial complex. I was a part of that. The idea here is that there really isn't any solution to the homeless problem, at least not one that's been actively pursued. But we keep pouring money into it. We keep pouring resources into the homeless problem, and we never seem to solve homelessness. All we do is get more homeless, right? I mean, this has been a lament for a long time. When I was very young, when I was 10, 11 years old, my father became a Salvation Army officer. His first appointment was at the Harbor Light Corps in Denver, which dealt with, it was a homeless shelter. That's what it was. It was a soup kitchen to feed homeless people and a shelter to shelter as many of them as they could. Of course, back then they weren't called homeless. Back then they were called bums and winos. By the time I was doing it myself in the 1990s, late 80s, 90s, working in diverse places such as Atlanta, Toccoa, and then later in Modesto, California, I found myself working in the homeless industry, the homeless industrial complex, where we would sit around and talk about ways that we were going to help the homeless and never actually do anything worthwhile. In 1999, I went to a meeting in Modesto, California. I was the business administrator for the Salvation Army there in Modesto, California, and I went to this meeting. Big meeting. There were probably 40, 50 people representing different agencies and organizations in this meeting. And it was the city of Modesto unveiling to us their 10-year plan for ending homelessness in Modesto. That was 1999, so 09, 19, 22, 23, so 24 years later, I'm pretty sure that homelessness is just as bad, if not worse, in Modesto than it ever was before. Because these plans aren't about solving homelessness. They're about funding agencies that, quote unquote, serve the homeless. And I can say that with some authority because I was one of those agencies. It wasn't that we were in it for the money, but if you don't have money, you can't do anything. And so you end up with this situation where this 10-year plan to end homelessness and other things that were coming around, and as pointed out by Steve in this article, is that there is big money in homelessness and services. Big money. And if you can tie that to single mothers or some sort of underserved group, there's even more money in it. But the problem with that money is it all comes with strings. There are always strings attached. One of the biggest strings attached to federal money is you have to have a 10% match. So let's say you get $100,000 to, I don't know, feed soup to homeless people for a year. And this will, you'll come up with all these reasons about how this will help the homeless. It will improve their medical condition because they will be eating healthier foods. It'll increase their social activity because you'll get to meet with them, give them the opportunity to interact with social workers. You know, all these reasons you want. They give you $100,000 to do this for a year, but you've got to contribute $10,000 to that, which means you got to go out and raise $10,000. If you get $1 million, operate a shelter, you got to come up with $100,000. That puts a lot of agencies, particularly the agencies that are in the best position to actually provide services, kind of out of the running. It's hard to come up with that 10% match. It can be done, and you can be creative with it, but it does get difficult. And then the other strings they put on that is you have to increase services every year. So keep in mind here, the object of this stuff is to reduce homelessness, to end homelessness. But in order to continue to get the grants or the contracts, you have to increase services every year. Those are counterproductive goals. If we're trying to end homelessness, why do we need to increase services? And yet you'll find that in every contract that the federal government sends out, and many city governments and county governments do the same thing. It all comes with strings, which is why you end up with agencies that are not really about serving homeless or providing social services across the board. They're really about just getting government grants and really about just, paying themselves absurd salaries to do these things. It all serves to perpetuate the issue, not actually solving it. The more money you pour into something, the more of that you get. The more peanuts you feed to chipmunks, the more chipmunks you get. The more money you pour into homeless services, you get more homeless. Why? Number one, because it's just like the chipmunks. They become dependent on it. But number two, they require it in the rules. They don't say that, but it actually says you have to increase your services. You end up having to ask yourself a question. How do we know that any of this has any effect at all on homelessness? What the homeless rates continue to go up. And why do they say that that's the case? Well, they always have an excuse for it. But just like the homeless in the 70s, when I was a kid at my dad's Corps, CORPS, by the way, it never focuses on the real people involved. It's always about these ethereal, ideas that are up here in the air about, well, we don't have enough housing. We just build more housing, we'll have less homeless. Really? If we just do more of this, we'll have less of that. If we just spend more money on this part, we'll have less of that. It's the opposite of taxation. You tax things to de-incentivize them. You fund them to re-incentivize them. So by funding more homeless programs, you get more homeless. And at the end of the day, what do you accomplish? I did this myself professionally in my professional life. I did it for about 20 years, just shy of 20 years. And I can tell you that in that 20 years, do you know what the transitional rate from homelessness to housed was? From taking a person who was chronically homeless. I'm not talking about the tragic homeless, the emergency homeless, somebody's house burns down. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the chronic, dual diagnosed substance abuser, mental issues, that chronic problematic homeless person who's throwing bricks through your windows so that they can get arrested, so they can get a night in jail, get, a free meal. Those are the people, the people that are out there like that. That's who I'm talking about. Do you know how many people, what the rate was we took of those people from completely homeless to completely housed, functioning, even just a year later, not 3, 5, 10 years later, just 1 year later? Do you know how many we converted in 20 years? 1. Oh, we had plenty that we moved into transitional housing and got them on their feet and got them jobs and everything else. But inevitably, they ended up back because, again, We're not dealing with the real problem, which was that they were dual diagnosed. They were substance dependent and they had mental issues, and nothing in the programs that were being funded was dealing with that. That's how you end up in Manteca with those homeless folks that dug out the side of the hill and were living underground. 20 years, one guy. And that was only a year. I don't know where he ended up because I left. I had to leave in part. It's not the only reason that I left social services. Most of you know that I had an opportunity in radio and I took it because I was tired. 20 years plus my childhood of all this. You can't solve all of people's problems. There's no solution to it because the problem, A, is misdefined, and B, the solution to the problem is just throw more money at it. Chronically homeless people don't want that kind of help. They don't like the rules. They don't like the fact that they have to give up their freedoms. They don't like, and I'm not telling you something that I think, I'm telling you something that they've told me to my face. I can give you the names of the people who told me. You want them? I used to run the shelter in Modesto, California. The object here was, how much money can we get? And when it became clear to me that we were just going to try to get millions of dollars to do this instead of just the tens of thousands that I was working with, thought, you know what? 20 years from now, I'm going to be doing the same thing. The faces will change, the names will change, and it'll be the same people doing the same things for the same reason with the same results. But by God, I'll have a higher salary and my agency will have more money, or somebody else's agencies or whatever. But you know what? We'll still have a bunch of chipmunks that we're feeding peanuts to because that's what we were doing. I don't know ultimately what the solution to homelessness is. I don't know that there is a solution. That's what I should probably say. I don't think there is a solution to it. Nor am I saying that we shouldn't be compassionate. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that much as Steve's article refers to it as the homeless industrial complex, what I am saying is the more money you put into this, the more money you spend on homeless services, the more bags of peanuts you're feeding to chipmunks who are just going to explode. Because that's what happens. And nobody seems to understand that that's not the real issue. But until we're willing to address the real issue, which is neither a 10-year plan nor more money, homelessness will continue to be a major problem. And it's not because we don't have enough housing. That's not the cause of homelessness, not chronic homelessness by any stretch of the imagination. But you can rest assured that the people who are making a lot of money doing this in the homeless industrial complex are going to tell you exactly the opposite. Just had a few more $1 million. Solve all this problem. It'll all go away. When they tell you that, write it down, record it, because I guarantee you that just like the 1999 10-year plan to end homelessness, it won't happen. The homeless, someone once said, will always be with you. Take the time right now. Tell the people that matter in your life you love them very much. You'd miss them if they weren't there. Don't pass up those opportunities. You don't want to have that regret. Plausibly Live, I'm Dave Bowman. This is my show. So I'm not sure what we're doing tomorrow. Bill, as you know, by now it's been officially announced, Bill's mother passed away on Friday. So he is off for this week, so we will not be live on WMMB tomorrow. But we'll do something. I'll keep you up to date. Check back and make sure you check in with me. Have a great night, everybody. We will see you next time.